getting in the ambulance, getting to the hospital. Luckily, I had a great surgeon and I had so much pain medication at that point. I was kind of out of it.
There are names in entertainment that define an era, and then there's Simon Cowell. For 2 decades, he wasn't just a name. He was a brand, a symbol of immense, terrifying power. The man in the tight black t-shirt and high-waisted trousers wasn't just a judge on a talent show. He was the gatekeeper of dreams, the architect of modern celebrity, and, for many, the most feared man in the industry. His word could launch a global superstar or shatter a person's hopes in a single devastatingly sharp sentence. He was the kingmaker, the puppet master, and he seemed utterly invincible. But the man we see today, at 65, tells a very different story. The once unshakable confidence is now often shielded by red-tinted glasses. His public appearances are marked by talk not of chart-topping hits, but of chronic pain and grueling recovery. The titan of television has been humbled, not by a dip in ratings, but by a series of brutal, life-altering encounters with his own mortality. A cascade of health crises, from near-fatal accidents to invisible illnesses, has painted a new, deeply human, and undeniably tragic portrait of a man who once seemed anything but. How did the mogul who built an empire on judging the weaknesses of others find himself locked in a battle against the frailties of his own body? How did the man who manufactured invincibility for pop stars confront his own vulnerability in the most public and painful way imaginable? This is the story of Simon Cowell's tragic turn, a story of how a life built on power and control was irrevocably shattered, revealing the fragile man who was there all along. To understand the depth of Simon Cowell's recent struggles, you first have to grasp the colossal height from which he fell. His wasn't a gentle rise to fame. It was a ruthless climb, marked by early failures that only seemed to sharpen his ambition. Born in London to a ballet dancer mother and a music industry executive father, Cowell was immersed in entertainment from a young age, but he was no prodigy. He struggled in school, dropped out, and bounced between odd jobs. His father eventually got him a mailroom job at EMI Music Publishing, a humble start for a future mogul. But the mailroom couldn't hold his ambition for long. Driven by a hunger for success, Cowell left to start his own ventures, both of which failed, leaving him broke and forced to move back in with his parents. He later called this period of losing everything the greatest lesson he ever learned, forcing him to focus purely on the work. This is where he honed his true talent, not as a musician, but as a spotter of what would sell. He found success with novelty records, signing acts like the Teletubbies and the Power Rangers. It wasn't glamorous, but it proved he had an uncanny instinct for what the public wanted. That instinct would become the bedrock of his empire. The real turning point came in 2001. Alongside Simon Fuller, he pitched a new kind of TV show to British broadcaster ITV, Pop Idol. It was a revolution. The show pulled back the curtain on the music industry and let the public decide who would be a star. And at the center of it all was Cowell, the judge who dared to say what everyone else was thinking. The Mr. Nasty persona was born. With brutally honest, often acerbic critiques, he became the villain audiences loved to hate. But beneath the insults was a raw authenticity. In a world of polite encouragement, Cowell's bluntness was a form of respect. He treated the competition with the life-or-death gravity that the contestants felt. In 2002, he took this formula to America, and American Idol exploded into a cultural juggernaut that dominated television for a decade. Cowell, with his signature black t-shirt and withering stares, became one of the most powerful people in the world. But judging was only half the story. The true engine of his power was his company, Psycho Entertainment, which he founded in 2005. Psycho was a masterstroke, a machine for creating stars. Cowell didn't just discover talent, he owned it. He created the TV formats, judged the contestants, and then signed the winners to his record label. He launched The X Factor and the Got Talent franchise, the latter of which became the most successful reality TV format in the world, according to Guinness World Records. Through these shows, he assembled a stable of global superstars like Leona Lewis' Fifth Harmony and One Direction. Artists discovered on his shows have sold hundreds of millions of records worldwide, a testament to the sheer scale of his influence. He was no longer just a player in the game. He was the game. At the peak of his career, Simon Cowell wasn't just living the high life. He was defining it. His power was absolute, his influence inescapable. He was the undisputed emperor of entertainment, shaping pop culture for years. His lifestyle reflected this. Sprawling mansions in London and Malibu, exotic holidays on lavish yachts, and a circle of friends that included billionaires and A-listers. His public image was fiercely protected. He was the epitome of control, cool, calculating, and perpetually unimpressed. The arrogance wasn't a flaw. It was a feature, a core part of the brand. When Simon Cowell spoke, the industry listened. This success brought criticism, of course. He was accused of creating a pop music monopoly and of exploiting the dreams of vulnerable people on his shows. For a long time, though, the criticism only seemed to burnish his legend. It reinforced the image of a ruthless operator who understood that entertainment was, above all, a business. Then, in 2014, a new character entered his life story, one that began to subtly chip away at the facade. The birth of his son Eric with his partner Lauren Silverman marked a profound shift. Named after Cowell's own beloved father, Eric's arrival introduced a new dimension to the mogul's public identity. Cowell, who had once seemed allergic to sentimentality, began speaking about fatherhood with uncharacteristic warmth. He confessed that after losing his parents, he never thought he would feel that kind of love again, but seeing the first scan of his son changed everything. He was, in his own words, besotted. This softening was gradual. On TV, he was still the sharp-tongued judge, but in interviews, a different man began to emerge, a man who wanted to build the same close relationship with his son that he'd had with his own father. He declared that being a dad was the best thing that had ever happened to him, a stark contrast to his work-obsessed past. This newfound softness made the tragedies that were to come all the more shocking. The invincible mogul had shown a hint of his heart just before his body would begin to betray him. The pivot from a story of power to one of pain was brutally sudden. It didn't happen in a boardroom or a TV studio, but in the sun-drenched courtyard of his Malibu home. In August 2020, Simon Cowell had a devastating encounter with chance. While testing a new, powerful electric motorbike, he fell. It wasn't a minor spill. It was catastrophic. He broke his back in multiple places. The scene was one of chaos and fear, with his family watching on. The pain was immense. Cowell was rushed to the hospital for what would become a grueling 6-hour overnight surgery, where doctors inserted a metal rod into his spine to stabilize the shattered bones. The severity of the injury can't be overstated. He later said when he saw the X-ray, he realized he had come terrifyingly close to smashing his spine to pieces, an injury that would have meant he might never walk again. In a later interview, he admitted he was lucky to survive the surgery at all. For a man whose life was a monument to control, the sudden, violent loss of it was a profound shock. The long road back was a painful odyssey. The man who was a constant presence on TV screens vanished, forced to miss an entire season of America's Got Talent. His life, once a whirlwind of international flights and live television, was reduced to the painstaking work of recovery. Had to learn to walk again. He later revealed the experience was far worse than people knew, admitting he had suffered a lot of long-term nerve damage as well. The pandemic lockdown became a strange blessing, giving him the uninterrupted time he needed to heal away from the public eye. The psychological toll was just as significant. Cowell, a man who built his career on an aura of invincibility, was now confronting the absolute fragility of the human body. He admitted the accident gave him a completely different outlook, forcing him to confront how unfit he had been and to completely overhaul his health. The kingmaker had been brought to his knees by a patch of pavement and a twist of fate, and the onslaught was far from over. Just as Simon Cowell was clawing his way back, disaster struck again. In early 2022, in a cruel twist of fate, he had a second e-bike accident. He was thrown from the bike, suffering a broken arm, severe facial wounds, and a suspected concussion. The image of a bloodied and bruised Cowell was a stark visual of his ongoing struggles. This second fall wasn't just an accident. It felt like a devastating pattern, a sign that the control he once wielded so effortlessly was truly gone. This cascade of physical crises was happening alongside a silent internal war. Cowell later revealed that the COVID-19 pandemic had been a real catalyst for a severe battle with depression. For years he'd suffered in private, but the pandemic amplified his fears to an unbearable degree. He became petrified of contracting the virus, terrified for his partner Lauren and their young son Eric. This profound mental health struggle led him to a place he never thought he'd go: therapy. For a man from a generation where the mantra was, "Don't cry, be a man," it was a monumental step. He described his first session as feeling a weight being lifted from his shoulders, wishing he'd done it 20 years earlier. As if the dramatic injuries and mental health battles weren't enough, Cowell was also fighting a more chronic, grinding war against his own body. For years, he has suffered from debilitating migraines, a condition so severe it has forced him to miss auditions for Britain's Got Talent. The intense, laser-like studio lights are a major trigger, and to combat the agonizing pain, he has taken to wearing distinctive red-tinted glasses during filming. This isn't a dramatic, one-time event like a bike crash. It's a persistent, unseen agony that he must manage every single day on set. It's another constant reminder of his body's limits. The broken back, the second crash, the chronic pain, and the deep anxiety all paint a picture of a man under siege. The man who once judged others from an untouchable perch is now facing life's most difficult and humbling trials, one after another, in a relentless and heartbreaking succession. Simon Cowell's journey has been one of incredible highs and devastating lows. His transformation from an invincible media tycoon to a man battling profound personal challenges is a powerful story. What do you think of his evolution? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. The Simon Cowell of today is almost unrecognizable from the man who first strode onto our screens over 2 decades ago. The transformation is more than just physical. It's deeper, etched into his public demeanor and his outlook on life. The ruthless tycoon who reveled in his own hype has been replaced by a more subdued, reflective, and undeniably fragile man. His focus has irrevocably shifted. The obsession with ratings has been replaced by a focus on his health and, most importantly, his family. His son Eric is now the center of his universe. He speaks of the joy of being able to play football with him, a simple act his back injury once made nearly impossible. He has described Eric as the most amazing thing that ever happened to me, and credits him with saving him from a downward spiral of work obsession. In this new chapter, success isn't measured in record sales or TV franchises, but in moments of quiet fatherhood. There's a profound and tragic irony in his story. A man who built his fame and fortune by judging the flaws of others is now confronting life's harshest judgments himself. He has been judged by fate, by physics, and by his own physiology. He has been dealt pain, mortality, and the terrifying loss of control. The invincible persona he created has been shattered, but in its place, something else has emerged. Is this then simply a story of a downfall, or is it more complex? Perhaps it's the story of a man being forcibly liberated from his own caricature. The crises he has faced have been devastating, but they have also been clarifying. They forced him to look in the mirror and see not the mogul, but the man. A man who, like anyone else, can break, can hurt, and can fear. In facing these heartbreaking tragedies, Simon Cowell may have lost the empire of invincibility he so carefully built, but in doing so, he may have finally found a path back to himself. His resilience in the face of it all is perhaps the most compelling story he has ever been a part of.